events for the Riverboat Discovery in the summer. So Tekla loves to train dogs as well as mentor and support female mushers. Trailbreaker Kennel continues to breed and train Granite's descendants. This winter, Tekla will be organizing a 200-mile Iditarod qualifying sled dog race as memorial to her mother, Susan Butcher. And on behalf of the board at ADMA, thank you so much for helping bring education back.
Yes!
Thank you.
Yay, education! Oh, I'm so stoked. So, I was reached out to do this, and I was feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome about talking about anything as related to dog care, because it's such a challenging subject, because we're not in really an industry where there is, I mean, there's casual mentorship, but I think that also gives way to a lot of us feeling imposter syndrome. And I really hope that through this education initiative and through like just being more candid in our conversations with each other, we can help battle that, because we're all trying to do the best by our dogs, or else we wouldn't be in this industry. So despite that, I chose a topic that I thought would be easy for me, and that is record keeping and administration. So I started mushing, as I mentioned, as they mentioned, when I was pretty young. So I saw a lot about how to run a. My parents had basically stopped racing by the time I was born. I think my mom ran the bear grease when I was still an infant, and my dad had to bring me to every checkpoint so I could be breastfed, and then she would continue on. It wasn't the best race strategy, so they decided to stop racing a little bit after that. But I did grow up as they were building up the tourism business. So I saw a lot of the what do you do in a tourism business, but it wasn't until recently when I moved back to Alaska after college that I learned much of the why. So I hope that I can tell you guys some of the why that I've been discovering over the past few years. I came back to Alaska. I studied theater in Connecticut at Wesleyan University for quite a few years, and then I was set and costume designer for 3 winters in New York City. But every single year I came back to Alaska, I worked at my family's kennel as we start our own independent tours, and of course doing the tours with Riverboat Discovery. So I still had sled dogs in my life in the summertime, even when I was away getting my education in the winter. And after a few years of traveling on the New York City subway, I was like, heck no, techno, I need to get back to Alaska. I'm an interior girl. I like those rolling hills. I like the river valleys. I don't like subway travel. And so I moved back here in December of 2019. And that was kind of when COVID hit. So I started helping my family with all of the grants and loans that we had to do during COVID time. So the Paycheck Protection Loan, the Shuttered Venue Grant. And through that work, I got to mentor with our operations manager, who had been with us for about 20 years. And she kind of showed me the books and showed me what was going on. I was able to get into it after that. After COVID, she left. And then we also didn't have like a main kennel racer. So I took on a couple of different roles and was kind of in charge of the administration for the dogs, administration for the tour business, and everything else that's involved in like having land in Fairbanks. And so that was a challenging couple of years. We were also coming out of COVID, and I was, struggling to figure it all out. But through all of that struggle, I actually practiced a lot of the like budgeting and bookkeeping all myself. And now this year I feel a little bit more confident. And so I feel like I'm able to share some of that struggle and what I've learned through it. Hello, Laura. And so I just want to start off by saying the thesis of my talk tonight is going to be, if you take good notes, you will learn and you will grow and you'll make more informed decisions. The more info we have in our hands, the better we're going to make decision making. And I think that's really true, especially when you get into the above 10 dogs range, because you'll remember, oh, they had a bad stool this day, but you may not specifically remember what you were feeding. And so the more notes you take, the better your decision making is going to be in the future, especially as you're getting into bigger numbers of dogs. So that's kind of the theme of every single thing I'm going to say tonight, is take good notes if you want to. And it has definitely helped me. That being said, though, I'm not a tax professional. This isn't like business advice. I'm not a veterinarian. I just want you to know that what I'm telling you is stories from my experiences, and I'm still deep in the throes of learning all of these things. So just take it as, conversation between friends. Okay, we're going to talk about 4 main things tonight. First is veterinary and dog care records. Second is going to be budgeting for a kennel, and that kind of goes hand in hand with planning your kennel. How many dogs do you want to have? Where do you want it to have. Do you want tethers? Do you want pens? All of that stuff that goes into collecting assets and also planning for the amount of dogs that you can love and support happily. And then the final thing is, if you are getting outside of the realm of this being a recreational thing for you, a hobbyist, as the IRS people like to say, you might want to get into some business management. For instance, if you're starting a tourism business, or if you're getting into the realm of racing where you're getting sponsorships that's bigger than just friends and family supporting you, or if you're getting so big that you're doing speaking engagements, things like that. So that's sort of the next step, and it is nice because then you can expense some of these like very costly expenses and have some income generated from the dogs, but it also is a lot of work. So let's start with the fun stuff, which is sled dog care. So I keep so much records, and right now I still have a lot of redundancy in my record keeping because I haven't quite figured out which way I like to do it. So we're just going to go through, I'm going to throw a bunch of different scenarios of how you could keep records, and you can pick and choose, what might be interesting for you to remember tomorrow. Most importantly, if anybody's racing, it's so important to keep vaccine records because that's what they're going to ask you for. So I'll show you how I keep those. Genealogy is so much fun for us to look at. Also, it's really good if you're going to be making informed decisions with your breeding. Injury, surgery, and care reports. I keep records of even the medications I've given dogs, if they were limping on a certain day, because as I track all of that and as I look back on how my season went and I notice this dog really did poorly anytime when it was 30 degrees above zero, I'm going to be able to make more informed decisions about that dog going forward. I even keep, just because feeding is a really challenging thing, and I hope at some point in this education program, someone will talk about feeding, but I have kept all my feeding maps and recipes for the past few years to see what has worked for me. It also allows me, for instance, to look back and remember what I did the summer before. When we start just feeding kibble again, I'm like, oof, Cassidy get a cup and a half, I can't really remember, but if I look back at my record, I'll have that and I'll be able to make sure that her weight stays consistent throughout the summer. Next is training and mileage logs. Obviously, that's going to be very important to make sure all your dogs are getting stimulation and activity. And of course, if you're pushing them harder, that they're getting the correct training program that you have developed for yourself. And then lastly, I like to keep detailed record on deceased, retired, sold dogs, just because people do come and ask me sometimes. I've had a lot of people ask me, hey, do you have the genealogy on this dog? And because I have all of my mom's records, she was just as fastidious as me. I have every single genealogy on every dog we've ever owned. So that's pretty cool. And it's so fun to look at. You just say, oh, this dog came from a Norwegian. So I'll pass this around just because it's a cool object to look at. And we'll get started looking at some of the vaccine records. So at Trailbreaker Kennel, we're a little bit crazy because we've got many people coming in and out, many people administering dog care. In the summertime, we've got up to 10 employees. In the winter, it's a group of 3 or 4 women, and we collectively train and race these dogs, and we want to make sure that they're all having the care that we want them to have. So we have binders for every single dog. Inside of their binders, the first page is going to have a little info on them. So an incoming handler or somebody who's just volunteering for winter will have some info, and they can have some information on the dog. Next, we're going to have that genealogy page, which is fabulous and so much fun to look at. Next, we are going to have their vaccine page. So I really like to have anything that a vet on a race would like me to have on a piece of paper. So of course, I'll also have my rabies that the veterinarian gives me, but on the back of that, yes. But for mid and long distance, the 3 main things that you're going to want are going to be proof of a distemper and parvo vaccine. Many races require a Bordetella vaccine and a rabies vaccine. Also, some races are going to require that you have these vaccines a certain amount of time ahead of time. So if you're planning to, for instance, run the Yukon Quest, it's good to look at their rules and it says, oh, this has to be given a month ahead of time or whatever, and so that you can plan your vaccinations. I think a really good rule of thumb is to go in around November or fall and whenever you fall train and make sure that all of your vaccines are up to date. Anything else to add?
No, thanks.
Yeah. So this is what mine looks like. I would be able to hand this piece of paper and my rabies report to the veterinarian to check of a mid-distance race. There's also the option of having it, I have double, also the option of having a big like Google spreadsheet that helps you decide when your dogs need stuff. So this was, for instance, our spreadsheet going into November of last year. I can go down the list and say, Julie's due for rabies, so we better bring all these dogs to wherever we're gonna do the rabies. And then of course, they were all also due for their December parvo. And so that's a good way of having a quick, easy look. And if you're gonna keep one thing, it's probably easier to keep one Google spreadsheet than 27 binders. Again, this is an example of a genealogy. So this was a dog that we had in 2004. We've got all her litter mates over here. We've got her mom and her dad. And then my mom also added in who the dog came from. So it's from Robert Sorley. So we know there's a Norwegian dog. And then we get to see some of my mom's good dogs over here. Always fun. Okay, this is important if you run a big business, or if you run a big kennel where there's lots of different people engaged in the care, or if you have a kennel where you travel a lot and often rely on house sitters, because the clearer you are with them, the clearer the care is going to be for them. So this is an example of a medical log that we have just sitting on the table in the barn when we walk in. So if there's 2 or 3 of us, it looked like this week it was like me, Elena, and Katrina were all helping administer care. And so this was sitting on the table. We knew that Farmer had gotten an eye injury and he needed eye drops and cephalexin. And so in the morning, we wrote down when we gave it to him, and in the evening, we wrote down when we gave it to him. And that's really good. And I do that even if I'm by myself at home, because it reminds me to do it, and then I never skip a day. And then also, I can put that into his binder, and I know he has a history of being on this eye drop or whatever it is. It's also really nice because if you have a handler or something and you're not in town and a dog needs to go to the vet, you grab the binder, you have everything you need, and you take it to the vet. We also do health checks. About every month, we'll go in, we'll check their weight, we'll trim their nails, and we'll look at them. This is, again, an example of a large bulk thing, but it also helps you track how you're doing with your feeding and your training and everything. This is an example of one of my feeding maps. So I'll have my recipe that I'm doing down here if I have any additives with fat. It looked like at this point I was feeding sort of a meat slushy and then dry kibble on top of that. So we have the dry kibble numbers as well as how much labeling of liquids they were getting, and then some little additions everywhere. And so I might update this every couple weeks, every month. And one thing I wish I had here was like, what temperature was it that week? But that's an example of that. And then activity logs. So this is an example of a mileage log that I have kept. Here, it's most important to have what's important to you. If time is important to you, put that down. If mileage is important to you, put that down. If temperature is important to you, put all of that down. Also, if I'm forgetting to do all of my other records, this is the one that I mostly do because you can see I add in things like, oops, I cut the quick of this dog's nail over here. Or oops, this dog got neutered. That's not an oops, that's an intentional thing. But, or I hooked this dog up as a leader. And so I can add little things into here that makes it really easy for me to make an informed decision about, oh, this dog has been leading a lot and I really wanted to train this other dog. Let me pop it in. That's an example of one of my mom's logs. She did a similar thing. She didn't keep as many detailed things as me, but we can pass around her 1993 puppy training mileage, which will be cool. All right, any questions on that? Or does anybody have some sort of record that they keep that I didn't mention that they find really helpful? Yes, heat cycles I normally put in a incident log, or I have it on the mileage log, but also like an incident log. So that's also where a link might go. Not that it's an incident. Okay, Cool. I love this stuff. It's so fun. All right, so kennel planning. I was fortunate enough to get to work on the kennel that I work on a property that was already purchased. But buying the right property is going to be really important. And I have had to go in and get some conditional uses put onto our property through the Fairbanks zoning laws. And that has been a challenge. And so it's just good to make informed decisions going in. Even if you choose to put your kennel up in downtown Fairbanks on a swamp, you should probably know the zoning wasn't going to allow that. And so you're making an informed decision, even if it's a somewhat silly decision. Also planning your dog yard. What you're going to want to plan for when you're looking at your property is, of course, the soil, how much space there is for tethers and pens, and how much space there is to expand. Planning for the right number of dogs. This is a key thing. In this Mush with Pride book, there's a hilarious image of this musher like holding a shit shovel and like thinking time, $, puppies. And I just love it. And every time I think about keeping your kennel the right size, I think of that image. And I think that's really true though. It's important to talk to everybody in your community before adding dogs to it. Talk to your spouse, talk to your kids, talk to your support network, and make sure that they're going to be okay, because it is a lifestyle and sometimes you're going to go out of town. And it's important for people to also be on board with it. I also think that if you're like really going dog crazy, there is an awesome thing of like borrowing and sharing. And sometimes, and it can be really challenging, but I am a big proponent of people leasing dogs if they feel they're like, oh, I'm like 50-50 about if I should have pups or if I should lease a dog. I feel like it's always a better and shorter term investment to lease a dog. And then you can get some good experience with that dog before committing to a litter of puppies, which is always a big commitment because they're dogs so quickly. Okay, let's talk about zoning. So the Fairbanks North Star Borough has a couple different definitions for what kennels are. There's major kennels, which is 25 dogs or more, and minor kennels, which is 24 or fewer. And within all of the different zones within Fairbanks, there's going to be permitted uses and conditional uses. Permitted uses you can do. You don't have to ask for anything. They come with the land. Conditional uses is something you have to ask for, but they are going to be allowable if it makes sense to the people who you apply it to. So for instance, at Trailbreaker, we wanted to serve beer and wine, and we had to get a conditional use permit to do that. So we just had to apply and make sure that everything was going to be safe for us doing it in that permitted area. So a good thing is if you're shopping around to go check out the Fairbanks North Star Borough zoning identification map. And you're going to see a lot of sandy brown here, which is general use. General use is sort of cowboy territory, which is great. It's a lot of Two Rivers. It's a lot of Old Murphy Dome and Esther. And that's why you see a lot of dog teams there, because you can. So dog teams are always allowable there. But let's say, for instance, we want to go into Goldstream. And we want to try and buy in a rural residential, RR. So we'll look and we'll see zoning district is an RR, rural residential. Let's go and look at the codes and definitions. So we go over to Title 18. And we're going to look at the use regulations. So within permitted use, it looks like we can have 24 dogs or fewer, but it's got this stipulation that it has to be an 80,000 square foot area. So then you know what you're shopping for. Okay. So, all right, next let's talk about setting up your kennel. All right, so this is an example. This is what we did at Trailbreaker, and I'd love to hear what other people do. But we started off with a gravel pad that had good drainage, and it was a good spot, and we planned to have an open system or an open tether system on gravel. And then we started bringing tourists there, and so we built a fence around the tethers so that there was a little bit of separation between the tourists and the people. And then we started building a couple platforms for rock eaters, and eventually we just kept building platforms. And over the past 20 years, we have completed it, and now we have about $1,000 of platform maintenance every summer. We replace boards, we paint the platforms. They're beautiful and they look really nice for tourism, and it's really nice to clean. In the fall, in the spring, they're a little bit, they hold a little bit more water, so they don't drain as well. But I definitely like them, but we didn't know we were going to do them. So for instance, when we pounded in our posts 30 something years ago, we pounded them for the level of the ground. So we don't have as much clearance as we might want over the dog houses, and I wish that's something we had thought about. So planning as much as, regardless, it's a really lovely spot. It's so wonderful. The dogs are very happy and safe and social. But that's just an example of my journey with it. In addition to the platform and tether system, we have a couple of different pens. So we've got a whelping pen that has a nice big dog house for pups to be born in, with a little easy for puppy to climb down ramp in it. That's underneath this lean-to over there. In the wintertime, that becomes a really good pen for dogs that can't be on a tether if they have an injury or they need to be in a covered situation. We've got a couple of bigger pens that in the summertime we can use for raising pups. We've got this one over here. In the winter, we can actually have tethers in there as well, and that can be a multi-bitch heat pen. And then we also have this really nice large pen, which is for pups as they get to be older, 3 or 4 months and bigger. I really like having pens. I think that the minute you have an intact female, on a tether system, you should probably have a pen on your property. Good. Okay. Budgeting. Okay, so I really love these numbers because they're round, they're overestimations, and they really help me plan for the winter. So when I'm budgeting, I like to say that it costs me $2 per dog per day to feed in the summertime and $4 per dog per day to feed in the wintertime. That's assuming I'm feeding high quality kibble and I'm getting meat, and I'm probably buying it like straight from Cold Spot. So dollars. So I like to sit down and try and make a budget for what my winter is going to look like, around last week, for how much it's going to cost me to feed the dogs, and then other disposable expenses like straw and booties, and preparing for all of that as we head into winter time. Straw, meat, booties, important purchases in the fall time if you're running distance dogs. You need straw, but booties. Another thing is gas. Like if you don't have good trail systems and you're going to have to be trucking into Musher's Hall or wherever you're going to be trucking to, consider that that's going to be a very big expense for you in the wintertime. As we all know, having dogs, you got to purchase a bunch of stuff to keep them happy. And some of these things you're going to have to replace and maintain. Regular vet care. I have a budgeted allotment of money for the unpredicted expenses. Of course, I have the predicted expenses like the rabies that I need to get done every 3 years. But then there's also a fund that I've thought long and hard about, how much I can spend on the unpredictable expenses. And that again goes into deciding what the right size kennel is for you. I make my budget and then I spend throughout the winter. Normally it's more, and then I'll check it against so I can make more informed decision next year to maybe save some more money or to accurately budget correctly. So let's say we had this person that we've dreamed up who was doing all of that as a hobbyist, but now that person wants to make a little bit of money off of their dogs. So they're either gonna start racing and winning races and having an amazing speaking career, which is probably not likely, or they are going to work in tourism. And so I just recently learned this from my tax accountant, that the biggest tick-offs for industries that get audited are horse-related industries and dog-related industries, because those are fun industries. And so people assume that they're sort of a hobby industry or hobby business. So what we need to prove when we're starting these businesses is that they're legitimate businesses that make income and have expenses. I'm saying all of this because in 2020, Trailbreaker Kennel had an IRS audit, and I got to work on that for about a year. And it was so much fun searching through all of the receipts. Luckily, I had been around for all the purchases of these items, but I had about 7 pages of individual receipts from, say, $30 at Fred Meyer's Fuel to like $17 at Joann's Fabrics to fix a harness. And I had to go through and send them justification on every single one of those receipts. So it's good to think about it and have that stored in a good way. So the biggest things, if you are asked to prove that your business is a legitimate business, is to have it set up like one. Be legally able to do business in Alaska. So that means getting an Alaska business license, and we'll just go to the page real quick there. Having insurance, especially if you're working as a subcontractor for another tour business. For instance, most of us would be giving rides for somebody who brings in bookings, or might be running a business that brings in its own bookings. Keeping records and receipts for taxes. What I really like to do is get my receipt, write on it what it was for, take a picture for it. If I'm feeling really spicy, I'll send it to bookkeeping@trailbreakerkennel.com. If not, it'll just sit in my phone log until I'm ready to go through and send it. We also do annual bookkeeping at the end of the year to look through all those receipts, put them in their different categories, and get them ready for the questions that the tax accountant is going to ask. And lastly, once you have all those receipts, you can decide what are your actual legitimate business deductions for what you were doing. So for now, let's assume our person decided, hey, I'm going to go work at Trailbreaker Kennel and do subcontracted sled dog cart rides. So for instance, I bring my dogs and my expertise and my amazing knowledge about this industry, and Trailbreaker provides the sled and the bookings and the marketing and the warm-up hut and the gear. So in order to do that, I'll first have to go and get an Alaska business license, because I'm acting as a business and I'm selling something, my services, to Trailbreaker Kennel. So many of you, I'm sure, have done this, but you just go to this amazing Alaska thing, click purchase a new license, enter a little bit of information, pay them some money, and click continue. You have to do this every 2 years, I think, is what business licenses are set at right now. And if you've put in the right PO box, they'll send you a reminder that says, renew your business license. And you're like, no, I'm done with that. I'm not giving rides anymore. And then you won't renew. So that's the first thing. Second thing is you're going to want insurance. So for my company's insurance policy, any of our subcontractors have to have a general liability policy with a $2 million aggregate and a $1 million per occurrence. What does that mean? Aggregate is the full pot of money that you have going into your policy period. So say it's for the year. So you could take losses, I think that's the right terminology, take losses up to $2 million, but only in $1 million per occurrence. So for instance, if you're mushing down the Tanana, you've got guests in your sled, and your snow hook hooks onto some swanky snowmobile and rips it to shreds to the tune of $1 million, then that would be the most you could get on that occurrence. That make sense? So that's what those words mean. And what I would suggest is you just go to a company that often covers mushers. I think the most popular in town is Country Financial. They cover a lot of subcontractors. And then for us, as we have a much larger or more for different things general liability policy, we use Hub Insurance, and they also insure my race that I do in the wintertime. So they're pretty good. Estimated cost for that subcontractor is going to be about $700 to $1,000 for the year for that insurance. So, okay, let's say we're continuing with this idea that we've got Joe subcontractor, and he's doing his first year of tours with a business that does the bookings. And you know, at the end of the year, after getting all those receipts, he'll have a pile of receipts for dog food, a pile of receipts for like extra carabiners he had to get for guest safety, or, you know, harnesses, gas. And then you'll just go through that with your CPA and say, what of this can I write off before I do my self-employment tax? And the more notes you take, the better. And the more notes you take year after year, the better. And then we can like collab and talk more and keep getting better at our jobs. I guess I will say though, if you are getting more into building your business and you're working for multiple different companies, or for instance, you're starting your own company and you want to get your own bookings, I would highly recommend either getting a professional bookkeeper or trying out bookkeeping software on your own. Even if we're imagining Joe subcontractor spent multiple years as a hobbyist, he may have already started doing like personal financing apps or personal finance apps like Mint, which is made by Intuit, and that can help him figure out his budget and what it costs to run his kennel. And then he may upgrade to QuickBooks Online, which QuickBooks is like the biggest bookkeeping software that most people use. And there are online ones so that now you can share it with a professional bookkeeper, but you can still input a lot of the info and you can look at it. So thank you so much for letting me talk to you.